All right, so we have opened the meeting at 7:03. Chairman has asked me to read the rules of conduct of a virtual meeting. This is a web-based call. We are operating on the following rules and procedures. This session is being both video and audio recorded. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally be keeping their video on themselves throughout the meeting. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or the chair. For public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours of the meeting, and we have not received any public input as of this time.
Thank you. We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. We have a couple of minutes to approve April 21st and May 1st. Does anybody have a problem with either of those?
I do.
Speak up.
All right. It's May. Let's see, May 5th.
Yeah.
I can neither confirm nor deny my existence at that meeting.
Were you there?
Yes.
I remember him being there. I'll attest to him being there.
Yeah, I should leave a dent.
Anything else?
I have to abstain from the April.
Well, let's do them separately. Let's do a motion on the April.
I move that we approve the minutes for April 21.
I'll second. Is there any discussion? Are there any dissenting votes? No votes? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay, then it passes. Can't do math. 7 of us minus 1, 6, 0 with 1 abstention. Now, May 5th. Any problem? You said that's the one
Yeah,
where we need to amend the attendance.
correct. Members
Anything
present.
else?
No.
Then there's a motion to amend the minutes with that one correction.
I move that we amend the minutes for the May 5th meeting to include Jeff.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Any dissenting votes? Abstentions? And it passes unanimously. Moving right into budget.
Ernie,
discussion.
does that mean that we approve the minutes or we just amended the minutes?
We approve the minutes with one amendment, with slight amendment.
With one amendment, yes.
Okay, just asking.
Budget discussion. We got a lot of new, I hate to call it information. Mark, you want to talk to us a little bit? I guess it doesn't look good for either, well, especially on my assumption that we could do revenue replacement, and
Well,
still not clear what we should be doing with capital projects, but
so
whatever you want to talk.
I sat through a CCM meeting of all the town managers, first selectmen and town and mayors of Connecticut. We're all confused with the information given. We've all read it. We don't know what it means specifically to our budgets. We just know that if we're doing a sewer project, a sewer, water, or broadband project, we're fine. Knock yourself out, spend a lot of money, but everything else is not clear as to what the money can be used for. And for lost revenue, there's an extensive formula that starts in 2019. It seems to have a 4.1% escalator, which should be your normal revenue increase that they'll allow, and anything less than that counts as a loss, net effect of the entire budget in revenue. But we were just having a little discussion before the meeting started, and different members of FIPAC are reading that same thing differently. So I think at this moment, including the mayor of Hartford, that I was just talking to, we're not sure what this means. So we're all waiting for clarity. And my gut feel is that clarity will come after we have our public hearing.
But your leaning is that we probably shouldn't be budgeting.
Correct.
using any.
My reading of what I read was that based on the fact that we do not have a net reduction in revenue, we cannot comfortably claim revenue reimbursement from the American Rescue Plan.
I don't understand that, Mark, because we do have a net reduction. Maybe it's only 100,000, but we have a reduction. And then we get to project a 4% increase on top of that. I mean, we had the lost investment income. We had the loss of the tuition. I mean, there was some, I mean, no, it's not huge, but it was something.
But I'm wondering if it's a net reduction in the whole budget, in all of our collections. Our collections haven't gone down. So that, I think the definition of net reduction is what we're all struggling with, and maybe Bev can add to that.
From what I read, it says the aggregate revenue, so that's everything, and pretty much has to do with government services. So I don't think interest can be included in the calculation because that's not part of the government services, it's an investment. So that may have to be excluded. I sat through part of a webinar this afternoon too. There might be some more guidance. It was geared towards more cities. So I'm gonna listen to the recording and see if there's more information, but they said each week they're going to try to send out more guidance as they get it. So right now, I think the best thing to do is not to put any revenue reduction because overall the town is not losing revenue in total.
Well, what about the loss of revenue from Park and Rec and things like that?
Well, Park and Rec is a little different. It's not a budgeted revenue anyway. It's in our, only thing that's budgeted might be the beach passes, and we pretty much come close to.
Yeah, but that's our aggregate revenue for the year.
Yeah, so we have to figure out what the guidance is, whether it's budgeted revenue or overall revenue, and it's not in the guidance. And there
Okay.
is going to be more scrutiny on how to use this money. Even the Board of Ed has gotten some clarification, and basically they have to apply for the funds with a whole new application to get the money. And the town, I think we're going to have to do some regular reporting on how we use the money. So there is going to be oversight from what I understand.
Of course, there'll be paperwork.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to do it, Ernie.
But if we have to look at revenue, we look at our base year, which is 18-19, what the revenue was in that year, even if you do look at the aggregate and not the individual. And we assume that in the following years, we would have had 4.1%. I'm pretty sure we don't have 4.1% more than we did in 18-19, do we? Has anybody done the math?
No, we do not. We don't.
No.
No, I think we were pretty much steady. Last year it might have been a little more because of the ECS grant came in a little higher. So
Yeah, but you're not supposed to count intergovernmental transfers.
yeah, so we have to do an analysis of all this. The information just came out in the last 2 days, and there hasn't
I
been
understand.
much information to kind of look at things more closely. So I thought we'd get money by now. We haven't even gotten the money, so.
I don't know. I still think there's probably room for that, but we may
Yeah,
not
but-
know this week.
And if we ignore all the things that they tell us to ignore, are we likely to find anything significant? Hello,
In revenue, you mean, or overall in the budget?
less revenues.
Well, I think if you look at the revenue for this year, we've seen on a lot of the government services such as building permits, gun pistol permits, real estate, we have gone way up. So we haven't really lost any revenue this year, and the collection is about 98.6 right now, and Carol thinks we could get closer to 99 by the time we get through June 30th. So we're definitely not at a loss overall. We can't, and even if we were having a loss, we couldn't even use this money to cover property tax. I think that was pretty clear in the guidance I saw. So we'd have to exclude that from the calculation also. So it's going to be a tough call to do it. I can tell you that when spending, from part of what I heard this afternoon, some of the money is could possibly be used to help residents and businesses in town that are struggling. So we're going to have to look at that, and we may have to set aside money for that. So there's just a lot of information in this 150 pages plus in the webinars we're going to be sitting through. So, but I think the most clear guidance may not come until May 28th, when we're supposed to have a more detailed one from CCM that's geared towards towns. So it's hard
Let's
to
go back
call.
to revenues only. We, last week when we were playing with numbers, we put in, what, 140, 144?
So
Assumption of money.
yeah, that was in the assumption. I didn't put it in the document because there was no decision made on whether to clearly put it in. So I did not include it in this week's copy because
Yeah,
I
but
think
we went
left
through the,
it
yeah,
about.
that's okay. We went through that process, and we said if we assume 144 revenue replacement, that means we take what, 471 from the general fund or something?
Let me see if I pull it up. Where is it?
414.
So we would have been taking out 414, 361. And without the revenue loss, it's gonna be 558, 360. Do you want me to share my
and
screen?
no, I
Got it.
gotta come to. And we calculated that if we went back to the 558, that was 1 point something mils.
Yeah, 1.14.
Okay, then five pack, what we should be kicking around is maybe from a safety standpoint, we step back and ignore the 144. Do we want to do that and then just say it's okay to use 1.1 mils from the general fund, which is 558,000, which leaves us with a fund balance, what percentage, Bev?
I calculated it's gonna be about 18.35%.
Let's talk about that. Dick, you like to talk about percentages, go.
I think I would strongly support taking that money from the fund balance. I think 18%, over 18% is a very, very healthy fund balance. And that's what we would have if we took that 558 from it. So I think that's the way to go. And that would allow us to keep our mill rate at a 0 increase.
Who else wants to talk?
I'll talk. Maria, was there anything else? Do we have anything, any other reductions that you guys found, or Mark, anything on the operating side of the Board of Selectmen, the town?
Not from the schools, no.
And not from the town.
All right, so I'm sort of with Dick on this. I mean, if we're being told that there's really no realistic viable cuts that can be made, still having a healthy fund balance, to me, and I made this point last week too, so I feel that it's fine. What was the fund balance the end of last year when we made our assumptions on the budget? we were supposed to be at 15, I think, right? Or 16?
It was in that range. best-
Yeah,
just
and,
my
and it,
knowledge, but-
yeah, and it's actually, in actuality, we had money back in there because the fund balance went up to what, 21 just about, or 20?
21.48.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
and it could go up again because we don't have all the, because it's not year end yet, so there could be some additions up top of what I already have in there, so.
yeah, so I feel there's very little risk in adding whatever that difference is, 40,
The 144,000.
414, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I find very little risk in that. My personal opinion is that we'll probably end up somehow getting most of that difference back, if not all of it. And if you look traditionally at, our year-end fund balance at the end of our fiscal years. So that's my thought.
Can I talk?
Yes,
I actually agree with Dick and Brian, and in addition to our traditional influx of funds at the very end of the year, I think we can safely say that if there's any possibility for rescue funds, that will just bring us up more. I mean, it may turn out that there is something available to us as this, information is refined and filtered, hopefully by others than our town budget and officials. I think, again, it brings me to the very low risk for doing this. And I also like to make the point, maybe too frequently, that I don't feel it's up to us to go through expenditures, line by line by line, and second guess the people who created them, who are intimately familiar with the work that they're doing. I think we should be laying out our expectations and assumptions early on and trust the people that are operating in these roles to know what they need. I think it's fruitless to pick through small expenditures and find 5,000 here or 2,000 there. That's it.
anybody else?
I have something.
I just
that-
agree with Judy on what she just said about not going through line by line. I think that's like.
Well, let's not debate that. That's
Right, that's just my
I
opinion.
I agree, that's all.
okay. There was another voice.
Me, Lauren. I don't know. Can I bring up something that I noticed within the 150 so whatever pages?
Yes,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So from what I read, it looks like these funds could actually be used for the AC at the school. I don't know if anybody else saw that or where like the discussion exactly is on that, but at least that's from what I read on page 18.
I actually had that thought too, Lauren.
I
Um,
agree. There's also a lot of
basically-
infrastructure, other
Yeah.
infrastructure like
So-
capital buildings that can be
Yeah.
used.
So basically, it says ventilation improvements in congregate settings, healthcare settings, or other key locations, which includes settings like schools. So
What page are
that's
you
one
on?
thing that I noticed.
Do
Sorry,
you have
Ernie,
a
what,
page number? Page
what
number?
page? 18.
Thank you.
I think the key to that is that I haven't read it, but I don't think we should budget it. And we should wait till it's clear. And if we decide how we can use it and if the school ventilation system could benefit from it, we have multiple years to spend that money on that. So we have the engineering done. I have engineering done on Rec Park. I have engineering done on all sorts of projects. But I don't want them in the budget in case that disqualifies that expense from using the funding because it's already budgeted.
Currently, there's no money in for the actual project, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
So we might be able to use it in the future. But if
Right.
we budget it, they'll say, oh, well, you already have the money. You can't use it.
Right, so what was in the budget was just for the study on it, right? Or like the,
The study and the partial funding to get it going.
Maybe we should lose the funding. to get it
capital-
going.
right, so
Figure it
could
out.
that not be used? I mean, could the funding from the CARES Act not be used for that?
We don't know. And I'll
Right.
let Maria speak to air conditioning because
We
that's
don't
her.
know, we don't know yet if budgeted items will be covered by the relief funds yet. The capital, AC in the capital was removed last week and the study was done out of this year's Board of Ed operating budget, so it probably wouldn't be covered. That probably wouldn't be reimbursable anyway, so.
Oh, remember, Lauren, I think that would have zero impact on this year's bottom line, because if you're talking about planning to use some of the grant money, you're also talking about adding back an expense, an equal expense. So that would be a zero bottom line effect.
Because I think we already took out the AC,
We
right?
did.
Yeah,
It's not there.
Yes.
Right,
Correct.
it's not there.
right.
So if you put in money to pay for it, you have to put that expense back, and so the bottom line net effect would be zero.
Right,
And it also doesn't preclude people, from considering that later down the line.
But we
Correct.
definitely should follow up on that thought you had, so that maybe next year when we do a special meeting and actually use the money, and then we'd be better off.
Thank you.
that's all I
Anybody
had.
else? Thank you.
Ernie, may I speak?
Certainly.
Okay, so I want to address the points made by Judy and Dick about we shouldn't go through line by line. I think that's actually why we get paid the big bucks here. That is our job, is to look carefully at what each expenditure is, because, 5,000 here and 5,000 there adds up. But it's not just the 5,000. I mean, if you want to look at just one line item, look at the Board of Education budget over the last several years for equipment. They budgeted 28,000 and spent 131. They budgeted 56, they spent 118. This current year, they budgeted 23 and they spent 117. That's not $5,000. That's almost $100,000 in 3 consecutive years of additional spending. We should be looking at that. And when we decide, because we can't tell them how to spend the money that they get a bottom line number. It is the only thing we can do as a responsible steward of the town's money is say that the amount that we're giving you, the 12.7 that you asked for, is too much. We should give you 12.6 or 12.5. That's all we can do. But we can't make that determination unless we look at line by line and we see how it's being spent. And if it's actually being spent in that way, it is our responsibility to look and see how each dollar is being spent, so that we can say whether the total number that they're asking for is reasonable.
Okay.
Ernie,
Anybody else? Jeff?
can I make a comment on that? I do agree with Kelly that our role is to ask very pointed and maybe difficult questions of both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed and get answers. But the bottom line is simply that we give a final amount and then it's up to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed to decide how they distribute that money.
Oh,
So I don't mind asking I don't mind asking the questions that Kelly just brought up. But and then get a response and then make our decisions based on the response.
From, what Kelly just brought up, there was extra money in the budget because obviously they spent more than they had budgeted for those items. So there were other items or say fluff in the budget that they could pull from to cover all those added expenses or do what they wanted to do. So, maybe their budget, and this is something we've seen and gone through for years with the fear that they inflate their budgets and then they do things like this when you know, it's hard to believe the bottom line. So I agree with Kelly. Maybe we're giving them too much.
Ernie, may I speak to a point?
If
If you'd like me
go
to.
ahead.
If you don't, that's okay too.
Well, let me speak first. I sort of agree with everybody. We should be sort of a watchdog, for lack of a better term. But remember, over the past couple of years, there have been unusual circumstances that have generated excess funds. For a whole year, we weren't transporting students. We weren't doing certain things, paying tuition because of circumstances. And I can't say that I remember everything I've been told, but we were told that those funds, when circumstances generated those excess funds, we were told that, hey, I'm gonna have extra money and this is what I'm gonna do with it. So it's not like we are totally uninformed or anything has been hidden from us. I must say that I've listened to those things and I like to double check everybody, but I can't just look at the numbers and decide, hey, Maria's pulling the wool over my eyes. I just don't have enough information to jump to the conclusion that they have too much money. I'm still watching, I'm still looking, but I haven't seen any numbers or information that would convince me one way or the other. But go
I
ahead.
need to
you were
respond to
speaking.
one point though, Ernie, by what you just said and what was said last week. It's really unfortunate for everyone to say that if I have a question about the bottom line numbers, that I'm thinking that someone's pulling the wool over our eyes or that they're doing something illegal or secretive. That is not my point. I know that everything that they're doing is legal, and I know that they're doing it with the best of intentions. And am not disparaging or discrediting any of them, thinking that anyone on the Board of Education or the superintendent are not acting in the best of faith. But at the end of the day, the bottom line numbers might be a little bit high. And it's unfair to attack the person who's questioning it as thinking that people are being bad, when that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that people are doing anything wrong. And I don't want it to be characterized that we're challenging their character, because I'm not. I'm just asking if the bottom line numbers might be a little bit higher than they need to be.
Okay, well, let me say that you read a lot into what I said that I didn't intend to
No,
be there.
I know, but I wanted to make it clear to everybody. It's not just you, Ernie. This is not a character assassination here. Okay?
Okay, and we are not assassinating your character, or I haven't heard anybody do that. Now let me throw it to Maria, who wanted to speak.
I mean, I think you pretty much said what I was going to say, Ernie. The past, what I can say is since I've been here, which is three budget cycles, we've come in under, bringing forward a budget that was less than the year before. We talked about this year needing an increase because of negotiated contracts, and we're not able to, as I would typically monitor budget lines in other districts I've worked in for years. You can do that in a typical year. These past 2 years, you cannot. So each time we're going through a year and we understand that there are funds available, we do have conversations at the board level of here's what we need, say in the building, we need to have these windows replaced. And some of those conversations happened because we were not putting those into the budget the following year. So when we are aware of funds that are available, we have those conversations at the board meeting. So, I'm not feeling like anyone is, accusing the budget lines or accusing me of not managing the budget appropriately, because all of the information is there in public. There are no secrets anywhere. So happy to share information. And, I agree. I'm hired to manage the budget, and I'm hired to develop and propose and hopefully have approved and then implement and monitor. And I take that seriously. And I work very closely with Bev and with the town departments and, fiscal policy to make sure it's all upfront and open to people. It's been a very strange 2 years, and I'm hoping things will look different next year. But I really do understand the demands of a community and that you're trying to fund everything that needs to be taken care of. So if I had funds to return, I would do that. I honestly can't say we can reduce our budget without reducing services to students. And this is a very unusual year where we need to actually add services to students based on what has transpired over the past, year plus. And, I can't go into a lot of details about specifics there, but there's a significant level of student need that we need to address.
Ernie?
Go.
So if this was already covered earlier in our earlier meetings, I apologize, but don't we have a fund set aside for Board of Ed? What's that fund that we, is it an
Non-lapsing.
emergency fund or the non-lapsing fund?
Mhm.
Is there anything in the current budget now that we can use those funds for, or is that completely, how does that work again? I'm sorry to make you repeat
It's
this. I'm sure I've heard it
Well,
before.
Bev could, or Ernie, it's an unanticipated, large expenditures, like if the boiler blew in the middle of the year and we didn't have funding, or if we had a special education placement that came out of the blue of $300,000, we'd come to FIPAC and request to access those funds. So it's not used as it is used in other schools as kind of a transfer reserve where you can
Slush
access
fund,
it. Yeah, it's not used in that way.
So when those situations come up that Kelly kind of highlighted, where you have a situation where you have a big spending over the budgeted amount and you're moving money around from other areas, would that warrant a situation where you wouldn't have to move money from those situations and take it out of that non-lapsing fund?
It would have to be above and beyond the appropriated budget.
It's more emergency. It's something totally
Okay.
unanticipated, like a student moving in with high needs. Like she said, the boiler all of a sudden busted, especially if her budget's tight and she doesn't have the available funds within her budget line, which luckily they've been able to do the last couple of years, was look within their budget and use those funds for some of the students who have moved in or changed services. Same thing with repairs, or she's been able to use within budget and not touch those funds. So it's totally like if they didn't have the money and the town didn't want to appropriate more, that's the fund they go to for things like that.
Okay.
Agencies.
I was pretty sure the smarter people than me had already figured that out, but I wanted to ask.
Well, keep looking.
And what I'm talking about are the excess funds. There's excess money in one line that they don't need to spend, so they reallocate it and put it in another line. And it's often equipment or textbooks that they had they budgeted 20,000 and they spent 120 because they had extra 100,000 somewhere else. And it's not just COVID years. I mean, it's in addition to the COVID years, it predates the COVID years. It's a historical trend. It's relatively common, but again, it's just something that we should be looking at. And if we don't know the real numbers, then we're not going to be able to look at them truthfully. And I think in June, at our June meeting, after the budget is over, I'm going to ask that we have a different set of budget documents that show numbers a little bit differently, because I think the numbers that we get here are a little bit misleading, and I'd like to see them presented a little bit differently in future years. I don't know if this is a mandated form, but I think that, the prior year expenditures are not easy to understand, and they're somewhat misleading the way they're presented here. I think there's a better way to show them, to show the adjustments that are made.
Which
And it's
form are
not
you
just with
talking
Board of
about,
Ed
Kelly?
budget, it's with the Board of Selectmen's budget too. It's not the individual ones that you present, it's the big one
Okay,
that looks like this.
Bev's document.
Bab's one. But I mean, I'm sure it's correct. It's just, I wish there was one more column in it. That's all. And I think next year we can ask if maybe we do some additional information in these budgets.
You want to show the Board of Ed transfers instead of the final budget in the document.
Yeah, like you do for the current year, I'd like to do it for the prior year. You have 3 columns for the current and you only have 2 columns for the prior. I'd like to see the 3 columns for the prior, just because it shows us where the transfers were.
Okay.
But not this year.
Well, it could end up being 2 columns because you're going to want to see the final budget. So it's going to be 2 columns and
Yeah, I know
Okay,
it gets cumbersome, but
Time out,
that's for June.
time out. Let's not redesign the budget document tonight, but what we said last week was we will put it on 5PAC's agenda to reexamine the way information is presented to us. So unless you reach the conclusion or have a suggestion for a change to the budget, this year's budget, is that something you're prepared to throw out, Kelly?
Yes, I'd like to go back to my original proposal that they reduce the Board of Education budget by 110,000.
Okay,
Ernie, can I say something?
sure.
I disagree with Kelly. I think the Board of Ed budget and the Board of Selectmen budget were presented in detail, and I think they're appropriate and at the level they should be at. And I would oppose reducing the budget.
Okay, we can do this in a form of a motion, or I will ask the general question, is there anybody who supports Kelly's suggestion?
Well, Kelly, if we pull 100,000, 110, we're changing what we need to pull out to $448,000 or just under a mil.
Mhm.
Okay. And if, you know, if they really needed it, they could come back to us. And, you know, by giving them that extra money too, it's going to raise their MBR, which is an automatic raise from next year and every year henceforth. So, you know, with a little uncertainty on exactly how much we're going to get, I don't think it's a bad idea to pull the money.
And I just identified $100,000 in one line that consistently for 3 years has been extra. I can go through the textbook line, that's also 88,000 one year, 79,000 another year, 20,000 another year. So I think there's room for 110,000 is my point.
You know, 5 years ago, Ernie, we were doing them line by line.
Yeah.
I remember those conversations.
So may I speak to just one thing, Ernie, just so people have full information?
Certainly.
So when purchases were made for things like curriculum materials, when I was hired, we had no curriculum programs in place. So we did do substantial purchasing over the last few years. And some of those decisions were made with excess funds. And it's consistent with a continuous improvement plan that we have outlined and drafted. It's our goals for the next 3 to 5 years. So the overages and the spending has been consistent with a plan that we had in place. If the $110,000 is removed, and I just want to be really upfront, the things that would get removed are school-wide enrichment, which is a half position that's remaining. So we will no longer have enrichment in the school. And we will have to remove probably the before and after school programs that are free to families. So they would have to be fee-based, which then puts an additional burden on families. And it is a potential of another reduction, which would be a related arts teacher. So these are, there are no other things that I'm going to be able to reduce that would, so I just want you to know what will have to go out there. If I'm going to go, which if you give me the 110, I will have to go back and list out what the reductions will be, which will have to be presented to families in the community. I want to be really transparent, because if I had it 110, I would cut it and give it back to you. It will be people.
I guess what I find interesting is that in one of the first meetings we had, I threw out exactly what Kelly is saying. That we ought to be looking, we ought to be, it seems strange, maybe there's a gut feeling that this is a little high. And everybody convinced me to shut up. Now we're almost at the end of the process, and we have this thought back on the table, and we've missed an opportunity to do line by line research or ask questions that had somebody come back with stronger answers. So even though I initially said we should look at this, and I still have a gut feeling that there might be some room, I'm not sure what action I could jump on the bandwagon that's growing here tonight to support any cut, because you guys talked me out of it. What else you got? Okay, so far 2 people have supported or voiced support. is there any enough additional support for a roughly $100,000 cut that would make Kelly comfortable throwing out a motion?
I support it.
Is that Lauren?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Just one quick reaction, the cuts Maria talked about, if we cut the $110,000, I think those are pretty serious cuts. And I would be strongly opposed to losing those kind of services from our school system. I
Dick,
think that would be a mistake.
Dick, I agree with you, but you can cut other line items. You can buy less pencils, less paper maybe. I don't know.
But in all reality, the after school clubs, I mean, generally, what would even be the cost of those? Because what I'm thinking is like Lego
it's-
Club and the other after school activities. So really the cost to a family, I don't see it being,
Totally different.
cumbersome to the
Right.
point where that would, I just don't think that that's something that would warrant budgeting 100. I don't see it, being such a burden to where it would warrant not cutting the budget for something like that.
Ernie,
Bev,
can
I-
I say something else?
I was just going to tell you the amounts. I think the enrichment person is like $36,000. The before and after school is like $30,000. All of our supplies is $25,000. So, and our building subs, we could wipe out building subs, but then we would be having more difficulty with covering classrooms. I personally, I don't see this as the year. I mean, I struggle with this being the year that this stand is taken, because we need more than actually what we have to meet the needs of children. And I do see it as a burden for families at this point in time. I don't think it's a discussion that shouldn't happen moving forward. I guess I'm just struggling a little bit when a reserve is over almost 19%, that there's a willingness to cut services that are currently in place for students.
But from what
And-
I've gathered, the reason why it's at that is because from what I've seen, being here in the short period of time that I have, the reason why the fund is at what it is because of the way this BiPAC is run, with the, questioning and the line by line type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. And I just want to say, I am in full support of the school. I have a daughter in school and I am in full support, absolutely. But with this, I think I agree with what Jeff said. I don't understand why we couldn't just take it out of the budget. And if it happens to be needed, then come back to it.
I can't
That's just
hire
my-
people unless the funds are there initially. So, how we use it. And again,
But they're already hired, right?
no, the halftime person, the person retired. So we went down from a full person to a half of a person. And then the after school clubs. So I would have to say parents pay. And then I don't think it's something I could come back to the board, to the FIPAC about, quite honestly, but
The other thing about all of this is, even without removing or taking that 110,000 out, our fund balance is going to be over 18%, which is about as healthy as it's ever been going into a budget season. Why are we even talking about this? Because there's not an issue in our budget. We have enough money in our fund balance to cover all emergencies and contingencies. I just don't understand why this is that big of an issue. It's
And
not like we have, we have enough, we have more than enough in our rainy day fund.
and we've
So-
come in under for the past 3 years and given money back when we have it. So the somehow suggestion that there's 110 that can be easily removed without impacting the education of children is really not factual.
But you
And
just, you
and if
just
I remember
contradicted
right,
yourself.
last year, if I remember right, last year, we
So
had 15 to 16% in our fund balance. This year, we have 18%.
But she
I
just
just
got
don't
through
understand what
saying-
this issue is about.
Dick, she just got through saying that, at the end of the year, they've been giving money back.
We have, because we've had 2 years of COVID where we haven't been able to expend the funds because we haven't had children in school.
We've been getting money back from Board Ed way back when we set up the fund.
Yeah, I
That's
can't speak
because-
to before me.
That's
Yeah.
primarily because of tuition money that was unspent. And that's been going on for 20 years. So of course it
But
goes.
they
back.
often spend some of the tuition money on other things. They don't give it all back. They give some of it
And
back.
don't, but I guess the issue I'm having though is the suggestion that there's a lack of trust, that you hire someone who has experiencing with managing millions of dollars of budgets, which I have in my prior job, was about close to, it was $36 million for 2 entities each. So it was like $80 million of budgeting. And somehow there's a question that I'm not thoughtfully budgeting.
But I don't
Without,
think it's a lack of trust on you personally. It's a lack of the details shown in the numbers.
but the numbers are there and the details are always there, Lauren.
But I think that's
and
what
they're
Kelly's
public
pointing out.
documents. Well, you could access them any moment. They're in minutes.
Right, and I
public
think that
documents.
that's what it is. It's the consistency of the numbers, not who you are as a person.
Oh, no,
think
no,
that's
I'm not
what we're
taking it
getting
personally.
wrong.
I'm not taking it personally, trust me. I'm taking it as the funds, the money, the transfers, all of that information is public information. It's been out there. We've gone through this whole budget process. We've come off of 2 years of COVID where the spending is it's not predictive of what we're going to need in the future because it's been such an anomaly over the last year and a half. I just find it really confusing to me why we're having this.
Maria, we have more than just your 3 years of experience. We have the 10 years before you,
True.
or the 7
Right,
years
right.
before you. So we have more experience. We are seeing numbers that are higher in transfers that can be made. And it's not just COVID. I know that you say that that's impacted 2 years, but that's not all it is. It's other years.
Yeah, I
as well.
can't speak to the prior year.
I know you can't,
Right.
but
right.
that's what we're speaking to. And
Okay,
that's, the
time out.
only issue is, should we
Time
be
out.
adjusting for that?
Time out, please. Okay, we're starting to get repetitive and we're starting to heat up a little bit. There are basically 2 proposals in front of us. You are suggesting that we reduce the budget by $110,000. The other, I hope there's only one other option, which would be to leave the budget okay as presented. So if you'd like to make your motion, Kelly, make the motion. Let's vote on it. If your motion passes, we're done. If it doesn't pass, without any other discussion, somebody else will make a motion to leave the budget alone. We're not learning anything new here. We're just going around in circles. So if you'd like to make your motion, make it.
I would like to make a motion that we adjust the total Board of Education budget with a decrease of $110,000.
Who would like to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. We've had a lot of discussion. Is there anything new anybody would like to discuss on this issue? And I stress the word new. Then, since this is not going to be unanimous, I'll do roll call. Jeff,
Aye,
yes or no for the reduction?
yes.
Judy,
No,
Dick,
No,
Ryan,
No,
Kelly,
Yes,
Lauren,
Yes,
I'm a no. That's 4-3 negative, I think. Yes.
yep, I think you had it right.
Correct.
Okay, Ernie, can I make a motion?
Sure.
I move we approve the budgets for the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education as currently presented.
Let's just do the Board of Education.
I'm sorry?
Let's just do the Board of
Okay.
Education. for consistency.
Okay, then take out the Board of Selectmen. I move that we approve the Board of Education budget as presented.
I second. Judy,
Okay. Been moved in second. We've had a lot of discussion. Is there anything new anybody would like to add? Okay, we'll do roll call again. Jeff,
No,
Judy,
Yes,
Dick,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes,
Kelly,
No,
Lori,
No,
I'm a yes. Again, 4-3. Remember, for those who aren't happy with that outcome, we talked about having a lot of numbers. We will vote again on the budgets after the budget hearing. If you got something concrete that you think is convincing, you have a chance to present it. But let's not go around in circles again. Dick, you were going to make a motion to accept the Board of Selectmen budget and financing the capital projects. Let that stand as,
yes, I move that we accept the Board of Selectmen's budget and capital projects as presented.
and as presented means I forget what's in the document or whatever, but that's basically what we agreed on in a consensus last week.
I believe so, yes.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, do I need to do a roll call again? Oh, this is on the other two budgets where we haven't had any dissension. So are there any dissenting votes on the other two budgets?
Ernie, who seconded the motion?
Oh, sorry, Judy.
Thank you.
Any dissenting votes on the other two budgets? In that case, they pass unanimously. What else do we need to do tonight? So these will be sent to the public hearing. We'll have the hearing, get a chance to vote again. Any final comments on the budgets before we move to the schedule? No? Bev,
Yes. I will get the postcard and mail her out. I'll send you a draft by tomorrow. And we'll get all this information out, hopefully by early next week.
you usually scold us about having to cancel a meeting. So
So
1.1,
Yeah, so it's tentative, so it's not been fully scheduled. So if you don't feel we need this meeting next week for any updates, it's up to you.
well, why don't we leave it on the calendar with the expectation that we'll cancel it?
Okay,
Sounds good.
so we'll check back on Monday.
Okay. Public hearing on what, May 26th?
Yes,
Correct.
And that is in person. Yeah, that says that. In the town meeting. So the schedule as presented here will leave alone. Anything else?
yes, Ernie, can we just, are we gonna have a chance to discuss how this is gonna look? Like, are we all gonna meet there and just kind of congregate together? Is there gonna be any sort of, 5-pack in general, because we do our meeting right after that, so I'm assuming that we'll be together to handle questions and things like that. Like,
Yes.
what's this gonna look like? Can we put together a game plan?
Usually there were two tables put together at the front of the room and we just sit across. I don't know if we need special spacing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Usually-
Mark, are we gonna do this the same as they did the town meeting for the fire truck? Is it gonna be
Yes.
social distancing and
Every-
and everything?
Correct. Everybody's 6 feet apart. And if we max out the gymnasium, then we'll have to move it outside.
Well,
Okay, so there'll be a
you have to
5-pack
have
table
tables
there.
set up- You have to have tables set up for 5-pack to be in the front of the room, so we'll have
Correct.
to set 3 or 4 tables probably for them.
Everybody wears a mask?
Correct.
Are water bottles allowed? Are we allowed to bring things to drink and whatnot?
You can bring water bottles, take a drink and put your mask back on.
All right, I want to just checking.
I
Now-
think it's good to ask.
Yeah, because
are
they
we,
haven't,
are we requiring people be vaccinated to attend or is not asking?
No, we're not asking, we're not showing proof. Things will start relaxing after May 19th, but I haven't gotten clear direction from our health district as to how strict they'll be for mask wearing on indoors. But at the moment, just assume we'll all be wearing masks. I'm hoping things will calm down by the 26th and it won't be quite as stringent, but I don't know yet.
Anything else? Got 2 seconds or we're out of here.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Be safe.
Bye.
Yep.
Night all.
Good job, Ernie, running the meeting.